He just wanted to drink his coffee. Earl Jenkins, 73 years old, retired teacher, widower, war veteran, was sitting quietly on the park bench he came to every morning. Same spot, same thermos, just him, the pigeons, and peace. Then they came. 3 teenagers, loud, laughing. One of them, Travis, had something to prove. Raised on internet poison and locker room ignorance. His friends egg him on. Say something, bro. He ain't gonna do anything. So Travis did. He called Mr. Jenkins names, mocked his skin, laughed at his age. Then, when that didn't get a reaction, he knocked over the old man's cane and spit on his shoes. Mr. Jenkins didn't shout. He didn't cry. He just looked at the boy with eyes that had seen decades of pain and patience. But what Travis didn't know was who was watching. Across the park, in plain clothes, sat a man reading a newspaper. That man, Mr. Jenkins's son, a decorated federal judge. One call from him, and everything changed. Travis thought he was playing a harmless game. He thought the world would laugh with him. Instead, he learned a lesson that would follow him for life. Why do some people only respect others when they're punished? What would you do if someone treated your father like this? If you believe dignity has no expiration date, like this video, subscribe, and leave a comment below, because today's story is one that needs to be seen. Mornings were sacred for Earl Jenkins, not because of some strict schedule or nostalgic ritual, but because they were quiet. No noise, no judgment, just the breeze, the sunrise, and the rustle of newspaper pages. At 73, Earl had found peace in simple things. A strong thermos of black coffee, his old wool cap that his wife had knit before she passed, a bench in Lincoln Park where the pigeons knew him by presence alone. He was known in the neighborhood, not for being flashy or loud, but for being kind, the kind of man who held the elevator for you even if it made him late, the man who knew your kids' names even if you forgot to ask his. But behind the soft voice and warm eyes was a man who had weathered storms. Mr. Jenkins had been a teacher for over 40 years. History, to be exact. He didn't just teach from textbooks, he lived the stories. Marched in Selma at 18. Took beatings for sitting at lunch counters. Buried friends who didn't make it past 1968. His hands shook now. Not from fear, from time. His knees ached. His back gave out on long walks. But his mind? Sharp as a tack. And his pride? Unbreakable. He wore his age like a crown, never apologizing for his wrinkles or his slow gait. He had earned every year. Across town, a very different world. Travis Monroe, age 17, was everything Mr. Jenkins wasn't. Young, loud, reckless, a star linebacker at Lincoln High, blonde, athletic, privileged in ways he didn't even realize. Travis wasn't a bad kid. At least, that's what his parents insisted at every PTA meeting. Just immature, his father would say. Boys will be boys. But Travis had grown up without boundaries. His dad was a real estate developer with HOA power and too much golf. His mom ran a community page that functioned more like a surveillance committee than a social group. And neither of them ever said no to Travis. He had a car at 16. He drank at parties, never got caught. He got into fights, and his record disappeared. That kind of power? It taught him one thing. There are no consequences if you wear the right smile. Online, Travis posted memes. Offensive ones. Laughs from his boys in the locker room. Comments like he looks like he belongs in the hood not here. Underneath videos of innocent people. But it was just jokes, right? Not that deep, he'd say. Until one day, it got real. The park was neutral ground. Until it wasn't. It was a Wednesday. Mr. Jenkins was reading an old edition of The Atlantic, a piece about education reform, sipping his coffee like always. The sun peeked through the trees. He adjusted his glasses and smiled as a child toddled past chasing bubbles. Travis and 2 of his buddies were cutting through the park to avoid a construction detour. They were skipping class, again. That's when they saw him. Old black man. Alone. Well-dressed, but sitting like he owned nothing. Travis sneered. Look at this guy. Probably homeless. Bet he's just pretending to read. His friend chuckled. Yo, you should ask him if he's lost. Or if he needs help finding the plantation. They laughed. They always laughed. And Travis, he liked the attention. He liked being the one with the guts to say what others wouldn't. So he walked over. The first words, "Hey, sir, you all right out here, all alone?" Mr. Jenkins looked up slowly. Calm. Polite. "Yes, I am. Thank you." His tone was gentle, but something in it told Travis he wasn't intimidated. "You sure?" "Thought maybe you wandered out of somewhere," Travis said louder. Mr. Jenkins closed his magazine, looked him dead in the eye. "No, young man. I've been right here. Maybe you're the one who's lost." Silence. For half a second. Then Travis's smile dropped. His boys behind him started snickering. "You got a smart mouth for someone sitting out here with a cane." And that was it. The line had been crossed. Backstory we haven't seen yet. What neither Travis nor his friends knew is that Mr. Jenkins wasn't just sitting there by chance. He came to this bench every morning because this is where he sat with his son when he was a boy, when Jenkins still worked double shifts to keep the lights on. And that son? Marcus Jenkins, now a federal judge. Yes, that Marcus Jenkins, the youngest black judge ever appointed in the state. And this morning, he just happened to be walking back from a legal interview, dressed in a gray suit, coffee in hand. And from a distance, he saw 3 boys and his father. He stopped walking. He didn't run over yet. He watched, and what he saw made his blood boil. Set up for the conflict. Back at the bench, Travis was now standing over Mr. Jenkins. He had kicked the cane slightly to the side, his voice louder. "I'm just saying, man, maybe you don't belong on this side of town." Mr. Jenkins didn't flinch. He didn't look afraid. He just looked tired. Tired of years of this. Tired of people like this. But he said nothing. And that silence? It scared Travis more than shouting ever could. So Travis did the one thing he thought would impress his friends. He knocked the coffee out of Mr. Jenkins's hand. It spilled down the front of the old man's coat. A long, heavy pause. Then a voice cut through the silence. "Pick it up." They turned. Judge Marcus Jenkins was walking toward them, slow and steady, eyes locked on Travis. Travis squinted. "Who's this, your social worker?" Mr. Jenkins smiled faintly, eyes still on his son. "No, that's my boy." And the way he said it, with pride, with weight, Travis felt the first crack of doubt ripple through his confidence. He didn't know it yet, but his world was about to change, and karma was about to make its entrance. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. There was something in the way he walked, deliberate, unwavering, that made Travis's laugh catch in his throat. "I said, pick it up," Marcus repeated. Travis blinked, then scoffed. "Or what?" Behind him, Mr. Jenkins stayed seated, calm as ever. But something had shifted. In the air. In the posture of everyone around. In the silence that swallowed the park. Travis didn't know it yet, but the game had changed. He wasn't in control anymore. A shift in power. Marcus stood just a few feet away now. Hands relaxed at his sides. Suit sharp. Presence sharper. "You dropped something," Marcus said again, voice even. Travis looked down at the spilled coffee. The shattered thermos. Then back at Marcus. "Not my problem," he muttered. One of his friends stepped in, trying to lighten it. "Hey man, it was just a joke. We didn't mean anything by it." Marcus didn't take his eyes off Travis. "You shoved an elder's cane. You mocked a man who's done more for this country than you'll do in a lifetime. And now you're telling me it's a joke?" Travis's face turned red. Not from shame, but from being called out in public, in front of cameras. Because now, people were filming. Parents, joggers, a street vendor across the path. And suddenly Travis, the kid who always got away with everything, realized he was being watched without control over the narrative. "Who's your father again? Who even are you?" Travis snapped. "His bodyguard?" Marcus stepped forward, just enough to drop the next line with precision. "I'm Judge Marcus Jenkins, Federal Circuit Court. And the man you just harassed? That's my father." Silence. Again. Travis's friend muttered, "Dude, we need to go." But it was too late. Because Marcus wasn't done. The lesson begins. You think being young gives you a pass. You think mocking an old man makes you stronger. But all it really shows is how weak you are. Marcus didn't yell. He just spoke with weight. And that weight, in front of a growing crowd, made Travis feel very small. He was teaching students when your parents were in diapers. He was marching for rights while you play Fortnite and repost memes. You don't even know who you're messing with. And the final line? You didn't just embarrass yourself. You embarrassed your name. The karma hits. A police car pulled up quietly, not with sirens, just presence. An officer stepped out, looked around, spoke to a vendor, then to a woman holding her phone. Within minutes, Travis's name was taken down. Witnesses were offering statements. Travis's joke had now become an official report of harassment, possibly even a hate crime, depending on the state law. His confidence cracked. Fast. Wait, we didn't do anything. He started it. The officer looked at Marcus. Then, at the phone video one of the witnesses had recorded. Didn't say a word. Just nodded. You'll be hearing from the DA's office, the officer said, coldly. Aftermath. Travis and his friends were escorted out of the park, not in cuffs but in shame. And Mr. Jenkins? He was still on the bench. Still calm. Still holding the dignity Travis tried and failed to take. Marcus sat beside him. Finally, gently picked up the pieces of the broken thermos. You okay, Pop? I've been through worse, Mr. Jenkins replied. Then, after a moment, but it means more when someone stands with you. Marcus didn't speak, just nodded, and sat with his father shoulder to shoulder as the park went quiet again. The video hit the internet that evening. It started small. A community Facebook page. A mom who'd filmed from the playground uploaded it with the caption, "This teen just harassed an elderly black man in our neighborhood park. Watch how the man's son steps in, calm, powerful, and respectful. This is how you confront racism." Then it jumped to Twitter, then Reddit. Within 12 hours, it had over 500,000 views. The headline wrote itself. Racist teen harasses elderly black man, gets confronted by his judge son. Meanwhile, Travis woke up the next morning to 327 unread messages. Texts, DMs, missed calls. His name was trending. First locally, then nationally. His Instagram was flooded. Screenshots of his jokes. Old tweets. Locker room jokes. Racist memes. All of it resurfaced. People tagged his father's company. They tagged his school. They sent it to college admissions. It wasn't just a video. It was a reckoning. The fall of a local hero. Lincoln High's coach called him in. You're suspended, Travis. Indefinitely. It was just a misunderstanding. You embarrassed the school. And this program. Don't come back until we say so. His friends went quiet. Some unfollowed. Some threw him under the bus. We told him to chill. He didn't listen. We were just walking through. It was his idea. The story shifted. Now Travis was the villain. Alone. At home, it got worse. His father, red in the face, jaw clenched, threw his phone on the counter. You humiliated this family. Your mother's crying upstairs. I didn't do anything. You spit on a veteran. On video. I didn't know he was a vet. His dad's voice dropped. You shouldn't have had to. Meanwhile, Mr. Jenkins didn't speak to the press. He didn't post a statement. He didn't do interviews. He just kept showing up to his bench every morning like nothing had changed. Only now, people waved more. A barista from a local cafe brought him coffee. A group of students from Lincoln High showed up with hand-drawn cards. One read, "Thank you for standing still when others wanted you erased." Marcus received dozens of emails. Fellow judges, community leaders, even people he'd sentenced, thanking him for his calm confrontation. But the one message that hit hardest came from a stranger. "My son saw your video. He asked why that boy was so angry. I told him some people are raised to fear difference. Then he said, I want to be like the man in the suit. Thank you for giving us that." Travis hits the wall. By the end of the week, Travis had lost his starting spot on the team, lost his college scouting trip, Lost over 2,000 followers on Instagram. He deleted his Twitter. Tried to change his name online. Didn't work. At school, students whispered. One girl asked him in the hallway, "Do you even know how many black soldiers died for you to have free speech?" He didn't answer. Couldn't. Because for the first time in his life, Travis didn't feel invincible. He felt seen, but not the way he wanted. The echo chamber. News anchors called it a powerful reminder of generational dignity. Blogs named Mr. Jenkins the unshakable elder. Marcus Jenkins was labeled America's calmest avenger. Travis? He was the face of what happens when ignorance meets a camera. But the worst moment came quietly. At the grocery store, an older black man passed him, looked him straight in the eye, didn't curse, didn't speak, just shook his head, and walked away. That look hit harder than any comment section. Travis didn't show his face for days. Not at school, not at practice, not even at the gym where he used to flex for followers. But shame has a way of sobering boys fast. On the 6th day, he showed up to the park. Alone. No cameras. No friends. Just him, clutching something in his hand. Mr. Jenkins was on the bench, just like always. When Travis sat down next to him, the old man didn't flinch. Didn't look over. Just kept sipping his coffee. That silence? It said everything. The apology attempt. Travis held out the envelope. "Sir, I know you don't have a reason to listen to me, but I wrote something. I didn't know how else to say it." Mr. Jenkins didn't reach for it, didn't even look at it. "Do you think I need a letter to know what kind of boy you are?" Travis's hand trembled. "No, sir. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For how I treated you. For not knowing better." Mr. Jenkins exhaled long and slow. "It's not about not knowing. It's about not caring." That landed hard. And fair. Travis set the envelope on the bench and stood up. "I don't expect forgiveness. I wanted to start with truth." He walked away. Mr. Jenkins waited a full 5 minutes before picking up the letter. Opened it, read it, and for the first time that week his hands shook. Meanwhile, Marcus watches quietly. Marcus stood at a distance just outside the park. He'd heard what happened, hadn't planned to interfere. But when he saw the boy approach, something told him to wait, to watch. And what he saw was different. Not performance, but pain. He watched his father remain still, then finally take the letter. Marcus smiled. Because justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a man sipping coffee while a kid walks away changed. Later that night, Mr. Jenkins called Marcus. "He came by today. I saw." He wrote something. Was it sincere? A pause. As close as a boy like that can get on a first try. The real tipping point. The next day, Mr. Jenkins went back to the park. Same bench, same coffee. But this time, the envelope sat beside him, open with a sticky note attached. I read it. And across the park, Travis showed up again. This time with a trash bag. He walked quietly around the lawn, picking up litter. Didn't speak. Didn't film it. He just worked. And Mr. Jenkins watched, didn't stop him, didn't thank him, just let him earn silence. Community begins to notice. One by one, people in the neighborhood noticed. A man who once glared at Travis gave him a nod. A woman who had posted his face online pulled the post down. Not because he was off the hook, but because he was doing the work. The tipping point wasn't viral. It wasn't loud. It was this. A boy realizing dignity can't be taken, only restored. The park was different now. Calmer. A little quieter. Not because people stopped talking, but because people started listening. Travis kept showing up. No cameras. No crew. No announcements. Just work. He painted benches. He picked weeds. He asked to fix the broken water fountain and paid for it himself, using his dad's money but refusing any credit. And every morning, Mr. Jenkins sat with his thermos watching. Not smiling. Not scolding. Just witnessing. A city council meeting. Weeks later, Marcus was invited to speak at a city council meeting about youth accountability and public dignity. He brought someone with him. Not Travis. Not Mr. Jenkins. a middle-aged woman. Her name was Gloria Daniels, one of Mr. Jenkins's former students. She stood up at the podium with tears in her eyes and said, "Everything I have, every choice I made, it came from a man who refused to give up on us when the world did. That man is sitting on a park bench right now with no plaque, no award. And still, every day he shows up." The room went silent. Then she pulled out something from her bag, a newspaper clipping from 1973. A photo of Mr. Jenkins leading a peaceful student protest after a racist school policy was passed. He wasn't just a teacher. He had been a leader for decades. The public awakens. The clip from the meeting went viral. Suddenly, people weren't just talking about Travis. They were talking about Mr. Jenkins. Newspapers ran headlines like, "Man harassed by teen turns out to be local civil rights pioneer." From silence to legacy, the life of Earl Jenkins. His mailbox overflowed. Not with hate, with gratitude. Former students, old neighbors, even people who once ignored him at the park. And Travis? He saw it all. He watched the world shift its gaze away from his mistake and toward the man who had every reason to destroy him, but chose not to. A new moment. One morning, Travis brought something different. Not coffee, not paint, a folding chair. He sat beside Mr. Jenkins, didn't say a word, and for 20 full minutes, they said nothing together. At the end, Mr. Jenkins finally spoke. "You know the truth now, boy." Travis nodded, that this wasn't about going viral. "Good," Mr. Jenkins said. "Then maybe we're done here." He stood up, left the bench. Let Travis sit alone. Revelation wasn't just for the crowd. It was for Travis, too. Because he realized something that day, he tried to make it right. But Jenkins, he didn't need an apology. He needed the world to remember who he already was. Fame never stays. Not real fame. Not internet fame. The video stopped trending. The hashtags got replaced. The story faded from headlines. And just like that, life moved on. For everyone but the two people who actually lived it. Mr. Jenkins still came to the park every morning. But the crowds? Gone. No more reporters. No more strangers asking for selfies. Just peace. Which, truthfully, was exactly what he wanted. Travis still came, too. But something in him had shifted. He no longer looked around for eyes watching him. He looked for work. If the grass needed cutting, he cut it. If the trash cans were full, he emptied them. If someone looked lost, he gave directions, politely. He wasn't trying to make up for what he did. He was trying to be someone who wouldn't do it again. The community responds differently. At first, people avoided him. Side eyes, silent judgment. Then slowly, quietly, things softened. A father who had once crossed the street with his kids now nodded when passing. A store clerk who once refused to ring up Travis's purchase started saying good morning. It wasn't redemption, but it was relief. School looked different too. When Travis returned to Lincoln High, he wasn't the center of the hallway anymore. He had to earn silence before he could even speak. Teachers treated him neutrally. Peers kept their distance. Only one teacher, Mrs. Franklin, pulled him aside and said, "What matters isn't what you did. It's what you're doing with it now." That stuck. Mr. Jenkins gets a letter. Weeks after the city council meeting, Mr. Jenkins received a letter in the mail. Handwritten. Neat. "You never said anything cruel to me, even when you could have. You didn't yell, didn't demand. You just stood still and let me see who I really was. I don't know if that's grace or strength. Maybe both. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm just telling you I won't forget what you taught me. T." He folded the letter, slid it into a drawer in his kitchen, didn't respond, didn't need to. The park returns to normal. Mr. Jenkins continued his walks. Marcus stopped by sometimes. A new bench was installed in the park, this one with a small plaque, in honor of quiet strength. It didn't have his name. He didn't want it to, but people knew. And more importantly, they remembered. Fallout wasn't punishment. It was the space between the mistake and who you become after. And for Travis and Mr. Jenkins, that space was finally quiet enough for truth to breathe. Recognition doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it arrives in small, quiet ways, like someone saying your name differently, with less fear, with more care. Travis's moment. For Travis, it came on a Tuesday. He was sweeping leaves near the community garden when a boy from school, someone 2 grades below him, biked past, then turned around. "Hey," the boy said, awkward. "My dad told me you were the one who helped fix the benches." A pause. That was cool. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. A door, slightly open. That same week, his old football coach stopped him in the grocery store. No speech, no advice, just a nod, a look that said, "I see what you're doing. Keep going." Mr. Jenkins gets something too. It had been over a month since the video. He hadn't changed much. Still the same bench, same thermos, same quiet dignity. But one morning, there was something taped to the bench. A hand-drawn sign, crayon, from a kid, maybe 6, maybe 7. It said, "Thank you for being strong and quiet like a tree." Mr. Jenkins smiled. And that was rare. The library event. The city invited him to a small library event during Black History Month. He said no at first, then said yes, but only if Marcus came with him. When they arrived, they didn't expect much. Just folding chairs, a few retirees, some local students. But then the librarian handed Mr. Jenkins a folder. Inside, letters. From kids. From teachers. From strangers. Some said thank you. Some said sorry. All of them said, "We saw you." When he stepped to the podium, he cleared his throat. "I'm not used to talking much anymore." Laughter. But I'll say this, I didn't stand still on that bench because I was tired. I stood still because I was done shrinking for people who needed me small. Silence. Then a long, standing ovation. Not for what he said, for what he represented, for what he had always represented. A quiet visit. One evening, Travis knocked on Mr. Jenkins's door. No letter this time. No apology. Just a question. "Can I help you with anything?" Mr. Jenkins looked him up and down. "You know how to cook collard greens?" Travis grinned. "No, sir." "Then come in. You'll learn." That night, Travis stood in a kitchen, hands greasy, apron-stained, but heart lighter than it had been in months. They didn't talk about the park, or the video, or the hate. They just cooked, and learned, and existed. Together. The real recognition. Recognition isn't always what you get. Sometimes it's what you give. And for the first time, Travis gave it freely. To others. To Mr. Jenkins. To himself. It started with a question. A little girl at the park pointed to the old bench and asked her dad, "Why does that man sit there every day?" Her dad paused, then said, "Because that man helped this whole neighborhood remember who we are." That moment, overheard by Travis, landed harder than any punishment ever could. Because legacy wasn't about going viral. It was about what people quietly carry forward after the noise fades. A change you don't notice until it's done. The bench Mr. Jenkins used to sit on, it had been replaced, but not with marble, not with some grand statue, just new wood, polished, comfortable, with a small plaque screwed in on the side. For the man who never had to raise his voice to raise us all. No name, but everyone knew. The school project. One of the 6th grade teachers at Lincoln Elementary gave her students an assignment. Interview someone in your neighborhood who inspires you. 3 different kids asked to talk to Mr. Jenkins. One of them brought Travis along, not as a subject, as a helper. He carried the books, held the mic steady, sat on the ground while Mr. Jenkins spoke. Afterward, the student asked him, "Did he teach you too?" Travis looked at Mr. Jenkins. "Yeah," he said, "every day." A living ripple. People started planting things. Near the bench, a line of sunflowers. Outside the library, a rose bush in his honor. At the community garden, a new row of collard greens, labeled Mr. J's patch, started and tended by Travis. One woman came by every Sunday to leave a single white flower on the bench. She never said her name. Mr. Jenkins never asked. Some things are better felt than defined. A moment with Marcus. One morning, Marcus visited the bench earlier than usual. He sat beside his father with 2 coffees. "You ever think about retiring from all this attention?" he joked. Mr. Jenkins chuckled. "I never applied for the job in the first place." Marcus looked out at the field. "You know you changed him, right?" Mr. Jenkins shook his head. "I didn't change him. I just gave him a mirror. He did the rest." Travis, years later. Time passed. The world moved on, new scandals, new headlines. But every year, on the same day, Travis returned to the bench. Sometimes alone. Sometimes with a friend. Sometimes with a kid from the youth center where he now volunteers. He tells the story differently each time. Not as a confession, but as a lesson. We don't get to undo things, but we get to outgrow them. And we get to honor the ones who showed us how. Legacy isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a man sitting in the same place long enough for the world to realize he was never trying to take space. He was holding it for everyone else. It started with a teacher. She showed the viral video to her class during a lesson on respect. Then, a parent shared the clip at a PTA meeting. A month later, another school asked Mr. Jenkins to speak. Then a university. Not because he was famous, but because he represented something timeless. Calm in the face of cruelty. Dignity when it was easiest to retaliate. His story became more than a moment. It became a mirror for how we treat each other when no one's filming. The ripple. Local news did a follow-up. Whatever happened to the man on the bench, it sparked interest again. Not the kind that trends, the kind that lingers. Churches use the story in sermons. Teachers built lesson plans around it. Veterans wrote letters saying, "Thank you for showing what real strength looks like." In one small town in Indiana, a group of high school students created a club called Still Standing, a safe space for kids to talk about microaggressions, bullying, and everyday injustice. They invited Mr. Jenkins to join a video call. He wore his brown wool hat and smiled from his kitchen. Marcus gets a call. One day, Marcus received a phone call from Washington, D.C. "We're updating the state curriculum on American civics. We want to include your father's story as a case study on peaceful resistance." Marcus paused, then asked, "Does he know?" "We wanted to tell him through you." So he did. And Mr. Jenkins, quiet, humble Mr. Jenkins, just nodded. "I never thought sitting still could take me this far." Travis hears the echo. Meanwhile, Travis walked into a bookstore one afternoon. On a shelf near the register, a children's book titled The Bench, inspired by a true story. He opened it. Page 1. There once was a man who didn't shout, but the world heard him anyway. He didn't buy the book. He just stood there a long time, smiling, quiet, grateful. Small places, big impact. In cities he'd never visited, people were naming things after the moment. A park bench in Detroit, a mural in Chicago, a scholarship in Baltimore for students pursuing restorative justice. But Mr. Jenkins never traveled to those places. He stayed in his neighborhood, because for him, the most important changes weren't national. They were local, personal, consistent. Final letters. The city gave him a folder thick with letters from people who never knew him, people who saw the clip for 10 seconds and still couldn't forget his face. One child wrote, "I showed your video to my little brother. Now, when someone picks on him, I don't fight. I just stand next to him like you did." Mr. Jenkins kept that one in his jacket pocket. Read it sometimes when the world felt heavy again.